Okay, and welcome back, everyone. It's time to get our day started. This is week one, day one of web fundamentals. If you are listening to this recording or watching me now, it's because you've earned your white belt and you've passed that milestone. You're now on your way to earn your yellow belt. Okay, that will happen on Wednesday of next week, as we can see here in the schedule. So now that's our new goal, to earn our yellow belt, and from there on we can earn higher belts. Okay, so this course, Web Fundamentals, it did not used to have programming basics as an introductionary requirement. So what I mean by that is programming basics would have been what preschool is to kindergarten. It's not required, but it's optional. And if you want to do it, well, then we made it required because we realized there was a better chance of everyone passing Web Fundamentals if we did that course, because the only time that we would have covered JavaScript, as you can see, is on Friday morning at the morning lecture, 10 a.m. And then we would do a little bit with it on Monday morning. But because we realized, well, we need to extend all of JavaScript to be a week in order to get past Friday, because Friday to next Monday to Tuesday is when we notice some students may get behind on assignments, and that's okay. So, all right, let's go over the schedule now, since I'm pointing at it from top to bottom. All right, it's the new schedule. It's linked at the top of the Discord. You all should have access, unless you're needing access through Gmail, a Gmail email that you didn't originally sign up with the dojo for. So you'll need a access. I believe all of you should have it now. I've invited everyone that's passed. So here it is. And it's going to be a little bit different than programming basics. Okay, we're going to have a little bit of a different rhythmic pattern to our daily schedule. This first day is going to, you're going to see here, we're going to cover orientation, introductions, and go over the schedule. So because we already pretty much did orientation when we did programming basics, we're not going to really emphasize much of that. I'll just go over it because it's good to remember what the rules are, and then we'll go over the schedule here, what I'm going over now. And then we'll have another lecture, so I'll be talking for about 2 hours this morning on setting up your environment, like using VS Code, Discord, and using the platform. Because we're already familiar with this, we don't really have to do this. What we're going to go dive straight into is what HTML is, all right? And that's going to give us an advantage. So we're going to dive straight into HTML. We're not going to go over platform, the Discord or VS Code. We're just going to go straight to HTML the next hour, and then we'll do as much as we can, and then I'll do a demo this afternoon. I'll build a project, not one of these, but something different. I'll go ahead and edit this to make it a surprise demo. I'll build a project just with the HTML that we have, and because we already all use GitHub, we pushed to GitHub, we've even updated GitHub, and if we don't know how to do that, we should reference the recordings of last week. Okay, last Friday, the afternoon recording, that's there at the end of the video. So we'll push to GitHub, update a repository. We've already done that, so we don't need to do a GitHub demo. What we'll do is just keep working on HTML. Okay, and I noticed in the Discord chat that some of you were working through the weekend and already pushing ahead through CSS and even to Wednesday, so that's looking good. All right, if you want to push on ahead, if this information is redundant information because you've already read through the material and completed the assignments, that's great. Okay, that means you're on track, you're ahead. The road gets harder as we learn more rules, so then you'll encounter a point where you're learning at the pace at what we're teaching. So but for everyone else, we'll be learning how to do HTML, and we'll be working on different projects today. Then tomorrow we'll pivot to CSS. Well, we'll talk about what the difference between HTML and CSS are, but just know that that's the difference. We're going to be working on CSS and then different rules in CSS until Friday. Friday, we'll be integrating JavaScript with our HTML and CSS. And we'll actually Friday, then Monday as well. And then Tuesday, we'll do reviews for the exam. So when we reach the point where we're using HTML, JavaScript, and CSS all together, and we're creating web pages that are dynamic and stylish, we'll then be ready for the exam. We'll be given a website to model, to example, and then we'll have to build it ourselves. Okay, and you're going to want to pass the exam on Wednesday. That should be all of our goals, because we'll have lectures on Thursday and Friday that you wouldn't miss if you're doing retakes of the exam. The exam will take 5 hours. That's the allotted time for that one. So contrast that to the previous test. As you can see, it's going to get a little harder. And we'll cover these topics on Thursday and Friday that will give you an advantage moving on ahead, instead of studying and taking the test on those days. Okay, so that's Bootstrap, APIs, how to use the terminal, and using media queries as well. So really interesting stuff. You're going to want to stay on track so that we make that yellow belt pass on Wednesday. And I believe we can all do it. I've seen your guys' abilities already. Your strength through struggle, and even those that retook the test and could solidify that score. So let's keep that mental grit that we can push on ahead if we get stuck. So we don't need any introductions. We know each other, I'm sure, by now. So let's, I think, is there anything else on the schedule I need to go over? Yes. The new addition to this curriculum of Web Fundamentals is that now we have project week after our test. Okay, we have a week of project. That is creating a website of our own, something that we would want to present on our portfolio, our GitHub portfolio that someone else can see, or even create something that would be a portfolio itself, like a profile page that would talk about yourself, a bio, and something that shows all your projects and how to contact you. Or maybe you want to work on a type of website that you've always had in mind that you wanted to build, or a project that you think is pretty large, but you're going to need help. So you may group up with other people in your cohort to create something, big and nice. And by big and nice, I'll show you what we mean by the time we get into HTML today. Anything else I want to talk about this week? We'll be mocking the work environment on the last week, which means we'll be presenting our progress as we go into each morning. We'll be demonstrating our Monday we'll set our goals for what our project is, and then each morning following we'll be talking about how we've met our goal, or what we need to do to meet our goal, or if we have a change of plan, what our process is, in way of thinking about what we need to do for our project. Then Thursday we'll be getting you ready for Python Stack. We'll be installing Python with you, and then on Friday we'll be presenting our projects. Okay, another change of pace. another thing related to the change of pace is that we'll be doing algorithm. We'll be introducing new. We'll still be working on JavaScript each morning. Okay, we'll be introducing how to do something new in JavaScript each morning. And we'll be doing an algorithm from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. each morning after this one. So that means we'll be I'll introduce a new rule into JavaScript or something we haven't learned yet, and then a problem using that thing I introduced in order to solve for that algorithmic problem. And we'll be doing that for an hour each morning. Then when we come back for our groups, we'll be presenting our solutions if we have any. If no one's solved it, then I'll present a solution to the problem. And this will get our demonstration skills up for that job interview, because there will most likely be an algorithm challenge in order to get considered for the job. So we'll be doing that every day except the day of the exam, and then Thursday and Friday as well as the project week. We'll still be doing algorithms in the morning, 9 to 10, for the duration of Web Fun. The only day we won't do it is Wednesday and today. Any questions about that? Does anyone have any questions related to the schedule so far? Will we spend any class time at the later date reviewing debugging in JS? You can't if you finish your projects for the day, that we have a end of day goal that you want to make, right? And it's at the very bottom of each day, what we want to complete by the end of the day. If you have any time left over in your day after you've met those end of day goals and you finish the reading for the following day, the homework, then you will, whatever spare time you have, you can use to work on JavaScript if that's what you want to build, your algorithm JavaScript solving problems. Okay, that's completely up to you. Yeah. As a side note, I've noticed, and this isn't like any official career advice, but just my personal observations, that some people really like JavaScript and algorithms, but don't like, styling and building web pages in HTML and CSS. And some people really enjoy the problems, or don't like, and vice versa. What is meant to say that they like one and hate the other, and hate one and like the other. So we have to get good at each one anyways. Okay, it doesn't matter what our preference is. We need to have that well-rounded skill set, even if it doesn't revolve around our strengths, because we need all of those components to get to that job. Even if you're a back-end developer, in order to see that data that you're presenting, you have to be a front-end developer, at least in this sense, that we're going to be able to see a web page and reach a limit cap. Some people love HTML and CSS and would prefer not to spend any time in JavaScript. That's up to you. Whatever you prefer to do, you can use the time. We just have a goal for you. You have to do a minimum of the algorithms each morning that we're going to go through, and then in the rest of the day, we're going to work on HTML, CSS, and connecting JavaScript to the HTML and CSS.
I appreciate the response. I was just more curious specifically on debugging in general was more my focus, just because like I know it was like a section of the reading and there was like a little bit of a snippet of information, but we never really like walked through it in depth at all.
Debugging a job. I'll be debugging with you guys each morning when we're trying to find out how to solve our algorithm problem.
Okay.
Console log.
I just didn't use the debugger correctly. Something was going on earlier, so I guess I'll ask during office hours.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I wouldn't worry so much about the debugger yet.
Okay.
It's something for you have a whole JavaScript stack dedicated, and you may be using that for that later if they introduce it. I remember.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So All right. Anything else I should mention about the schedule? Okay, homework. We do want to read ahead before we get to the topic the next day, as I said last week. When you read ahead about the material and then I talk about it, you'll have better questions for me and you'll have a better understanding. When I do the pull checks, your number is going to be higher compared to as if you didn't do the reading ahead. Okay, it's going to be like foreign language. You're going to be hearing, you know, it's going to sound like gibberish if you just hear it for the first time while I'm doing the lecture. If you do the reading ahead, then, you know, it might sound like a little bit like gibberish then, but then when I show it on the page and connect the dots, then it will be a better number. Okay, so keep that in mind. And so let's move along to looking at the orientation on the platform. But I'm thinking here. Oh, yes. Last thing I want to mention. Do you see here on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and also Monday and Tuesday, there's a block of time after the afternoon lecture from 3 to 4, and it's called lab code reviews. So this is necessary in order to be eligible to take the test. So you have to complete all your core assignments and then do one code review in one of these days. All right, so you do a code review in one time slot in all of these options. So either 3 or 4 on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday or Monday or Tuesday. Okay, what the code reviews are, they are a time when you present your code to me and to other people in the group that are doing the review as well. And you show a core assignment that you are either proud of and you want to show off and say, look, this is difficult for me to create, and you know, I figured it out through this, and here's my code, or here's a project I'm struggling with. I barely got it together. I know things are kind of falling apart here, but you know, I want some critiques on how I can make this better, or somewhere in the middle. Okay, so we'll be critiquing, commenting, or even praising your work, your code, if you're doing a good job. Okay, I would recommend using an assignment at the point of profile page, either flex blocks and ahead. I wouldn't use a code review on anything you would have done on Monday or Tuesday. I think that's a waste, because even though you're learning something, it may be difficult on Monday or Tuesday. After Wednesday, Wednesday's assignments and onward, those are things more related to what you'll see on the test. So any critiques or suggestions I give you there, that's something that will be better to remember when you're taking your test on Wednesday. And so when I open this up, let me see here. Whoops. I will open up a tab for you guys to be able to edit here at the bottom of the schedule called code review. And I have to edit here the times that are not accurate to what you should see on the schedule, and I'll work on that in a bit. But you'll put your name and assignment here on the group that you want to do your code review in. Okay, if you're the only person in a group by yourself, I will have to put you in another group so that you're not just presenting to me. You're in a group, so you get that feeling of getting your code evaluated as it would be in the workforce, in the workplace. And here are your assignment. Here's your assignment checklist. If I can expand this, it won't let me do it. So for HTML, it's going to be the registration form. For CSS, it's plotting our blocks, GitHub blocks, flexible columns, and profile page. Then for JavaScript, it's button clicker and likes. When you do all these core assignments, you'll be eligible to take the exam. Plus, you have to do the code review, of course. Okay. Everything else is extra, but it will supplement your knowledge. It'll help you. If you do all the assignments leading up to that core assignment, like portfolio, content, styling, button up, you'll be even better to do it when you get to that core assignment. So the practice assignments even help you complete the core assignment by supplementing your knowledge. So don't just jump from core to core unless you're constrained in time. I would use all the resources. Okay, so here also are some helpful links. As you can see, it's a little different. Like the word bootstrap is here. It wasn't there before. That's something we'll be introducing next Friday. So it will be a mystery link until we get there. Anything else? Project week. We don't really use this much, but we'll try to use this spreadsheet more, so I'm not sure how to. We'll just be commenting on your progress on project week. Okay, and let's go on to the platform and see any change, any slight differences than what we already introduced in programming basics. Okay, so here's page 1. And as you can see here, this is a measure of your stress level or a prediction of it as you go through this bootcamp course. And for each stack, as you can see, the peak is the test day, test exam day. Everything else leading up to it gradually builds up in difficulty until then, and then your project week, it drops off because you're building your own project. There's a little bit of stress that comes with it because you're working in that just week to build something that you've never built before. You can't get help from us to tell you how to make something exactly like something that hasn't been built yet. You have to kind of describe to us what the problem is, and that will be a skill itself, learning how to ask the right questions. So there is a little bit of stress on project week, but it's not as stressful as passing the exam. Once you pass the exam, then it winds down a little bit. Okay, so HTML will be relatively easy compared to learning some CSS rule and then figuring out how to use JavaScript with HTML and CSS comes with its own learning curve as well. Okay, I don't need to introduce these topics: practice versus core, course requirements. It's just good to emphasize: be present, be humble, develop strength through struggle. So be present, don't miss any lectures or be late, be exactly on time or be marked late if you're a few minutes late. All right, our TAs will note, and it'll be recorded in the Zoom times when you join exactly. And be humble means you've made it this far, but you may encounter a new wave level of difficulty with some of the concepts we'll introduce, especially in further stacks. And develop strength through struggle. So you guys know about this already. You guys have demonstrated that to me. Exams. 90% of core assignments completed in that means in this course in Web Fund, that means you have to get all of them done to get past 90%. The exam is 8. It's marked 8 out of 10. So there's points for how many different requirements you meet, and we'll tally those up. And if you get an 8 out of 10, just like the last exam or higher, you're gonna pass. So it's pass or fail, 8 out of 10. And we'll demonstrate what you need to get 8 out of 10. It'll make more sense by the time test comes around. So I'll introduce that next week on Tuesday, what you need to get an 8 out of 10. Academic honesty. You guys know about this already. That means when you use code, when you build code, you have to do it yourself. Don't use someone else's work. Don't copy it wholesale. If you work together in a group to solve a problem, use that solution, but build it yourself from scratch from your own code. Okay, don't copy it. Don't lend your code to someone else either, because we'll notice, because when you review assignments, you look carefully for the mistakes and you try to comment on it. And if you see someone else with the same mistake, then you realize, okay, this is the same code. So when you work on something, you can work together to find a solution, but don't just copy someone else's code wholesale. You can also go online to find a solution. All right. If you see a project that's completely done and you see that most of it has a solution to what you're looking for, you cannot copy it and just say that it's your work. You have to cite, who actually built the project as well. But if it's a snippet of code that you find, then you can just take that. It's just a little bit of a code that would solve your solution, like greasing a gear. So it's not required to take little bits of solutions. It's not required to cite, I mean. And what else here? Then also that means during the exam, you shouldn't be helping each other, right? So any help during the exam, if you guys help each other, that will be cheating, results in expulsion. Don't cheat on your assignments either. That would be you'd be on academic probation for dishonesty. Okay, and you will get surveys from time to time. I'll send you one at the very end of this, and our TAs will be sending them as well. You'll also get them through the platform. The surveys help us build the platform so we can understand what we can improve. So if you leave a detailed response, we'll take it to heart. And it'll look like that. Okay. And I think that means that we can get into HTML a bit early. And then at 10 a.m., we will, just dive into it further. So that's good news for us that we can get ahead. So before I transition into that, does anyone have any questions about the topics the different things on the schedule, anything in general?
So you said we gotta build our own projects. We get to pick what we want to build, like anything.
Yeah, anything. We recommend a profile page so that when you're on the job hunt, people can see, click on your website and see your projects. So you can build other projects and put them on that portfolio. Your GitHub will be that as well, but when you have your own, it just that much more impressive. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so then let's continue. So what are we learning? We are learning about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript now, how they work together. You know what? I could use a bit of your guys' feedback on this. I've been switching to this Blackboard to write, to write down concepts, but there's also a whiteboard to write. So, what's easier on the eyes? Is it black or
Blackboard?
Black, white? I don't mean to, like what, just honestly, I use the black because I use dark screens myself. Black, okay.
Yeah, black.
All right.
This just totally blinded me.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we stare enough into the light with the light bulb behind the screen. So let's make it a little easier to see here. Okay. So before we go into the platform, I just want to break down the concept of what HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are. Okay. Ooh, that's not something there. Let's erase this, make this better. HTML, CSS, and JS. So what are these and how do they work together? What do they do? Okay. So for our restaurant, we our imaginary restaurant that we've been using as a analogy to building code. Okay. I'm going to just draw here while I describe what I'm going to introduce. We describe JavaScript as handling data, the logic of like food that would be passed around from the back to the front. And so here our restaurant, it looks like a hole in the wall restaurant because it just has open as the name of it. You go in, you're greeted by the waiter, you're seated, and you're given a menu, right? And you have to select something from that menu. That menu is going to have different items that you can see as like a list of different things that you can choose. Okay. And then, with your finger, if you can't pronounce the name of the dish, right? If it's unpronounceable, you just point to it, and the waiter or waitress sees your selection, and then they report it to the back, and the back builds your burger. Okay. So what we're building with HTML is that menu, that list of items that they can see as text and read. Okay. What CSS does is it adds style to your restaurant. Okay. With HTML, your restaurant and menu is just bare bones. It's just text and just like a rigid skeleton of the concept that if you're working with CSS, you get to add some styling. Okay. So now maybe add some, with CSS, you can add a rose bush here in the front, and it's a little bit more welcoming than just something that doesn't have that, just a house. And you can now make the title a little bit more fancy and make it look official and such. And so CSS adds style. Okay, CSS adds the style to the bare bones menu. Okay, so now it's a fancy menu. It has like embroideries here, and it's laminated. I don't know. It's made out of leather. Okay, so now you have JavaScript. What JavaScript does is it adds some functionality to your restaurant, right? So now this we can't really use the analogy so well, but what JavaScript does is make it so that like if you click something, an action can happen. A pop-up will appear, or a pop-up will disappear, or you can change the color of something. You can change the styling of something. It makes the web page interactive. Okay. If anyone can think of an analogy, that would be great. Post it in the chat. But what JavaScript does on top of HTML and CSS is it makes this interactive. For example, when you go to a web page and you see that message that says accept or decline for cookies, that's a JavaScript pop-up that when you click accept or decline, that pop-up disappears. Okay, that's some functionality to your page. That's done with JavaScript. So the HTML and CSS are the styling. So let's learn how to do the bare bones of building something that looks like a menu. And also it's going to be forms as well. Our HTML doesn't just show data, it also receives data. So we can build forms in HTML. Okay. And that form information that you build with HTML, with JavaScript, you can make that appear on the page in other parts of the page. Okay. So for example, a button that you go to on a social media page and you click like, JavaScript is there to read how many likes and then display that number of likes. Okay, it's a little bit more complicated than that actually, but in short, JavaScript can do that. Okay, so let's go through the platform and obtain some knowledge about what HTML is. Before we do that, we can, since we have a little bit of extra time, go over what we're introduced to here. Okay, I won't read it word for word. That you can do that on your own time. I'll just highlight some of the key concepts. We have the request and response cycle. Okay, so the internet is a network of different computers. And this network of computers, when you want to visit a web page, you are a client. So these are the computers on the outside here, and the server is the place where it's a computer where the information is hosted. So we're gathering that information, we're requesting information, and that information is then given to us in a response, and that's what appears on our page. So request would be clicking on a link, typing a URL, refreshing a page. That's asking something from the server. We're asking for information. The response would be what we would get in to our request, the response to our request. Okay. Awesome. All right, let's go into building HTML. And you know what? In about 10 minutes, we'll stop this lecture. We'll take a break before the next hour-long lecture so that we can come in with a refreshed focus. And that's what we'd be doing anyways. Each morning after we do our algorithm, we'll take a 10-minute break before the next lecture. So for the next 10 minutes, I'll talk about what HTML is. But before I do that, do we have any questions about the request response cycle? Let's do a quick poll to make sure we're all on board with that concept. Yeah. It's not fundamental to understand HTML yet, but you'll be seeing this come into play the more you develop. You'll get to the end of your next stacks and you'll see the request response cycle really come into play. Okay, so what is HTML? It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext Markup Language. Anyone have a guess as to why that would be what HTML stands for? I mean, obviously that's what it is because that's what the creator said it was called. But, you know, what's in the name? Hypertext Markup Language. Anyone want to give a response? Here's my request response cycle. I'm requesting you guys give me a response to my question. Some guy had a stroke and said some random words. That's exactly what happened, actually. And from then on out, we've all, you know, had to learn what the results of his stroke were. No, hypertext markup language means we are, well, let's build an HTML page and then we'll see how this is the title for it, okay? That's actually the best response, Vincent, I've ever heard to that question. So okay. I'm gonna open up a folder here. I've created a folder for us. Excuse me here. Okay, here I am. Whoa. I'm gonna have to create a new folder if this doesn't work. All right, here we are. Okay, so I've created this folder called HTML demo. I'm going to open from this folder level. All right. The reason I'm sharing my page and doing this in front of you now is because I want you guys to do the same. Don't open your HTML or create your projects at the outer level. And here's what I mean by this. Let me go to the helpful links on our calendar and go to the folder structure link. And it will give us here an example of how we should have our folders. We should have something here at the desktop level. Then we should have a folder in our desktop somewhere that says Dojo assignments. All right, we've finished programming basics and now we're in web fundamentals. All right, so you want to create an HTML folder, something just dedicated for your HTML projects. And then for each assignment, for each index.html file that you're building, that I'll be building for you guys and showing you now, you want to make a dedicated folder for that assignment to hold that specific index.html. And you're going to want to open VS Code at this exact level in order to push your code to GitHub. If you open it at this level or this level and push your code to GitHub from here and provide that link in your assignments, you'll be doing it wrong. You'll encounter errors, and then you'll come into my room and ask me why, and I'll tell you it's because you didn't follow these instructions. When you open up this, when you open up a folder at this level, you'll be able to push to GitHub with ease. And you'll see just the files related to this folder, okay? If you have a bunch of index.htmls on a general HTML folder level without their respective folders to contain them, you know, when you later on, especially, this will be a bad habit when you're building projects later on, your files will be confused with each other because they're not separated and divided evenly in their respective folders. Okay, so create good habits now. You know, create a folder, web fun, and just for HTML. Later on, when you're learning CSS, create your folders for CSS and your files in those folders for those specific assignments. Okay, mine as I lecture and show you guys may look a little different than this because I'm not a student following this example. Okay, I'm just creating folders on the fly just to show you guys from time to time. But what I wanted to show you is when you open up a folder on Visual Studio, you want to open at the furthest level down that you can that holds those files. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm opening here, and you can see what level you're opened at by the title at the very top of this Explorer section. This is the File Explorer section of your Visual Studio Code. Okay, in order to create a new file, you click this button. Now I want to create an HTML file. So what I'll do is I'll name the file index.html. Your HTML files for now only need to be named index.html, and it's good to build a habit of calling it index.html because in a folder, when you're you know, when your website's looking for an HTML file to display initially, it's going to look for the index. Okay, so when we're wanting to see our work displayed on a browser, we're going to want to call it index so it's recognized. It's a good habit to build. Really, you can call it anything you like and it'll work the same. But index.html, calling it index is a good habit. Okay, so we'll just call it index.html. And in this index.html, we'll have different rules, different tags than what we've seen in JavaScript. Okay, it's a markup language, which means that, let's go here to the platform. There will be different tags, and we'll see what a tag means for headings and paragraphs on the page, for images, for links, for lists of things. See how this is a list of things? There will be different tags to show something that like this than to show something in a paragraph form, as you see above. There's tables that we can see, like a Excel spreadsheet table. All right. And there's also forms. So forms receive data. Forms receive information. Like when you go to your favorite social media website and you want to log in, that username and password, that's a form. That's asking you for some things. Like when you go to the DMV or you go to a medical appointment, they ask you to fill out a form. You're filling out information in the different boxes, right? Related to what those boxes are talking about. That's what I'm talking about here on your webpage. You're building different areas where people can enter in information specific to what it's asking for. Okay, HTML has predefined tags for each of these. And so for an HTML page, that means, let's say we want to build a paragraph on our HTML page. At its base level, there will be a tag that looks like this, a P tag with a opening and closing. And the content inside will be what goes in this paragraph that will be shown on your page, like this paragraph is shown on this page. See how it's just plain text in a paragraph form? So when we want to create plain text in a paragraph form on a web page, we have to build it in an HTML file. And in that file, we have to create a tag specific to what that is, called a P tag or a paragraph tag. And then the opening and closing looks like this. You have to, a less than and a greater than sign, or open and close caret, and a P inside, and a closing one on the other end. Okay. Opening tag, and you can use the same shortcut to comment here. So on a Mac, it's Command/, or PC, it's Control/, and it creates, your editor automatically knows how to create a comment when you use that shortcut. But this is how you would create a comment in HTML. Caret, exclamation mark, dash, dash. Okay, but your comment shortcut automatically knows, so you don't have to memorize that rule or spend time building that yourself. Okay. You have a closing tag, and the way you know it's a closing tag is by it following the opening tag and having a slash. There's a slash before the P at the end. Now, when we want to create content inside our P tag that will be reflected on our page, it will go here. So I can say, hello world here. That can be the end of my P tag. It can be a few words. In reality, you want more words if you're showing content, right? But you can make a P tag just as little as you like. So here it is. It doesn't matter how much I indent or space on my HTML file. it will not impact the view of this paragraph on the page itself. So it doesn't matter where on this file this lives, or how many spaces above or below the closing and opening p tag are. It could look like this with no comments. Generally, you want your code to look organized, but I'm just giving here an example that it doesn't matter if it looks like this or how it was previously. So in HTML, there's tags for everything, for every purpose that you want to build on the page. And each tag has an opening and closing, and the content goes in the middle. All right, you're going to need more than just a p tag to build a page, and we'll go from the beginning to end as to what a whole HTML page entitles or what it requires. But when you build components on the page, it's going to look like this: opening and closing tags. Okay, and this is what it means to be a markup language. It's marking up a paragraph tag, and then you put the language of what you want directly in there. It's not a language like JavaScript is. It's a markup language in this sense, that you just mark up different parts of what you want on the page: paragraphs, links, headers, and they are displayed on the page as such. So let's take a poll how well we're understanding so far what HTML is. Okay, so someone in the chat said, how much do the spaces affect the text? Okay, so I already answered that. Did that answer your question, Aaron?
Somewhat. I mean, I understand that if you have like, and if you press enter and then you put the open and closing of the P, it doesn't affect the text being displayed.
No.
But if you did hello and then space, 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 world, wouldn't that display like that in your page?
Yes. Yes.
But then what about the spaces before and
Before and
after?
after? No,
Yeah,
they don't matter.
they don't matter.
No. Only what the words have and the spaces between the words.
Gotcha.
Okay, good question. All right, so let's build an HTML page. All right, so there's different tags for each of these purposes: images, links, lists, tables, forms. And we have to categorize them so their purpose is demonstrated and viewed. So the way this is made is by making a list tag specifying what kind of list: an unordered or ordered list. In this case, it's unordered because they're just dots for each item on the list. Okay, we'll go in depth about lists later. And why HTML and CSS? HTML and CSS are the two web tools that have been standardized for the web. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript together are the language of the web. Okay, so here is a more accurate view of what an HTML page would look like. So in our p tag, we wrote like hello world, just like this, right? So we want to keep this as the simple view of our page, just one word, one string of text. But what is all this other stuff? This is all necessary just to see that little string of text. It's necessary. So what is it? Okay, well, let me draw here so you can get a view of what I mean. Before I do that, does anyone have any guesses as to what that these different tags mean. What is that doc type HTML tag? Anyone want to take a guess?
It's just specifying that that's a document type that you're using is an HTML5 file.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, this here, this is a unique tag, because as you can look and see on the other tags, each other tag has an opening and closing tag, right? This HTML is the opening one, and this one is the closing one. But this one has no closing one. Why is that? Because this one is unique. This one is declaring that this type of document that we're seeing here, even though it's already named .html, for the purpose of also telling the interpreters for the web, this is also telling that this document type is HTML. And the first tag we see that comes after this one is another HTML tag. All right. This HTML tag has a closing HTML tag. And everything contained within are its contents. So this HTML tag here is the first. This is the first parent of everything contained within it. Everything that is contained within it is the children of the HTML tag. It has two direct descendants, this head tag and this body tag. Okay. Things are now going to be ordered in HTML according to descendants. Who contains who? Okay, we know that the parent of everything here is the HTML tag because everything is contained within it. This is the HTML tag that holds the head and the body. And I think now is a good time to take a break because we have another hour of lecture coming up to introduce the different topics and rules of HTML. So does anyone have any questions about what we've learned so far? Anything I've talked about in this whole hour in general that you have any questions about before we move on? Okay. So let me do one last poll here. How well do we understand the concept of this tag being here unique, and then there's this HTML tag that follows it? That one has an opening and closing tag, and that contains everything in the HTML page, a head and a body. We'll describe what those are and what they do later, but it has a head and a body, and there's an order of whoever contains who is whose children. Okay, awesome. Looks like we're having a good grasp right from the start. So we'll take a 10-minute break at this time. I'm going to go over the schedule again just to reorient ourselves on what we're doing. Okay, we're at this point, we're going to meet in 10 minutes and go over more HTML rules until the end of the hour. We'll break out into an open lab section. We'll create rooms based on the assignments here and different readings that you're working on so that you can know who is in whose room working on what, and join that if you'd like. We'll have our office and office hours as usual. You can drop into a TA's or mine office after our second lecture and ask us any questions you like. Remember the 20-minute rule, which struggle with it for a good 20 minutes. after you've done your best research, ask a cohort mate. If that person can't help you, then join in a group to ask a question to a TA or an instructor, so that we're teaching as many people as possible that don't understand a concept. Okay. And then when you graduate from from this stack, you're going to need to rely on each other for future challenges, right? We won't be there for you in the next stack. So get used to relying on each other, as well as, asking us questions, right? We don't not ask us a question. If there's nothing, if you feel like you're furthest ahead and you want to ask anyway, come to our rooms. We'll help you. Okay. Don't be shy. Anyways, let's break out now. I'll create a 10-minute timer so we can see when we're coming back, and we'll do our second attendance check of the day then. So I'll stop sharing, stop the recording. Okay, and I'll see you guys in 10 minutes here.